You didn't lose everything. You were being reborn. This pain wasn't punishment. It was preparation for your purpose. Chosen one, this message didn't find you by chance. It's divine timing. God led you here for a reason. There are no coincidences in your life, only divine alignment. You've been wondering why everything had to fall apart, why you had to lose so much, why life stripped you bare when all you did was give, your heart, your love, your loyalty. But hear this. Sometimes God has to break you to rebuild you. He had to take everything so you could finally discover who you truly are. Not who the world told you to be, not who you tried to pretend to be, but who He designed you to be from the very beginning. This is your awakening, this is your rebirth, and this is the truth you were meant to hear. Before we dive deep, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because this message isn't just content. It's confirmation. It's a divine revelation for the chosen ones who had to lose everything just to find themselves. If your spirit resonates with this truth, type 77 in the comments right now. That number isn't random. It's a sacred signal to the Most High and the universe that you're not broken. You're being rebuilt, that you're aligned, awakened, and ready to walk in the fullness of who you really are. Not everyone will make it to the end of this message. Only those truly chosen, and those who stay, you'll receive clarity. You'll activate a deeper awareness. You'll unlock the hidden blessings buried in every painful loss, every closed door, and every silent season. This isn't just a message you hear once. It's a living truth, a spiritual blueprint that unfolds layer by layer. Rewatch it as often as your soul leads you, because each time you'll receive something new, a confirmation, a breakthrough, a divine key you didn't catch the first time. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. The breaking point when everything crumbles. Chosen one, you didn't just wake up one day and decide to change. You didn't casually drift into transformation. Life pushed you, violently. It didn't ask for permission. It snatched the comfort out from under you. Everything familiar started to fall apart, piece by painful piece. The job that once gave you identity, gone. The people you would have bet your life on, nowhere to be found. The relationship you thought was forever, shattered. What once made you feel safe was ripped away, without explanation. You weren't just broken, you were unrecognizable to yourself. Standing in the wreckage, trying to breathe through the weight of confusion and heartbreak, you looked in the mirror and didn't know who you were anymore. And the world, it kept moving, like nothing happened. You felt invisible, like your pain was on mute and your cries were bouncing off the walls of heaven. You were walking through life numb, questioning everything. Why me? Why now? What did I do to deserve this? But here's the truth the world doesn't tell you. The breaking wasn't random. It was revelation. God allowed what you were holding on to fall apart because it was never meant to carry you into your calling. The job was temporary. The friends were seasonal. The relationship taught you, but it couldn't elevate you. And the identity you built, it was based on survival, not destiny. You learned to wear masks just to be accepted. You minimized yourself to be loved. You overextended just to feel seen, and God said, enough. He let it all collapse, not to hurt you, but to heal you. The breaking wasn't punishment. It was preparation. It was divine surgery. He had to strip you of the false layers that covered your true power. You had to lose what you thought was everything so you could discover the one thing that can never be taken: your divine identity. You were never meant to fit in the boxes you were living in. You weren't created to settle for just good enough. You were marked for more, and that's why it all fell apart. The old life was too small for the magnitude of your mission. The foundation you were standing on, built on people's opinions, fragile success, and emotional codependency, couldn't support the weight of your anointing. So God allowed the shaking, the sifting, the storm. And yes, it hurt. It felt like betrayal, like abandonment. But in reality, it was your awakening. It was the divine reset your soul had been crying out for in silence. Because sometimes God answers the prayers we don't even have the words to speak, and his answer often comes in the form of disruption. You were never losing, you were being positioned. When the world walked away, God stepped in. When the lights went out, your inner light began to flash. So if you're standing in the middle of broken pieces right now, hear this. Those pieces aren't the end, they're the beginning. God is rebuilding you, brick by brick, not into who you used to be, but into someone greater, stronger, wiser, more powerful. This is the season where your true self is being revealed. The version of you that's not driven by fear, but by purpose, not shaped by pain, but by power, not addicted to approval, but aligned with divine truth. Chapter 2. Isolation was the invitation to introspection. Chosen one, after everything crumbled, what followed wasn't applause. It wasn't recognition. It wasn't instant clarity. What followed was silence, stillness, isolation. You looked around and suddenly you were surrounded by nothing. The phone stopped ringing. The text messages slowed to a drip. The places you used to belong to no longer welcomed you, and the people who once claimed to love you vanished. That silence was louder than any chaos you'd ever known. It echoed in your soul. It wasn't just quiet. It was painfully quiet. You sat in rooms that used to be full, now empty. Nights felt longer, mornings felt heavier, and the loneliness wrapped around you like a thick fog. It made you question your worth, your place in the world, and even your purpose. You began to wonder, did anyone ever really care? Was it all fake? Did they love the real me or the version I presented to survive? But here's the divine truth that only the chosen ones come to understand. The loneliness wasn't punishment, it was preparation. That isolation wasn't a curse, it was an invitation to finally meet the version of you that had been buried beneath noise, expectation, and constant motion. For the first time, you had no one to perform for, no one to impress, no one to mirror or mold yourself around. And in that stillness, something miraculous happened. You started to hear your own voice again, not the voice shaped by trauma, not the voice trained to please, not the voice repeating the opinions of others. Your voice, your truth, your essence. And what you found there wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. You realized how long you'd been running from your past, from your pain, from your purpose. You had been so busy trying to be enough for everyone else that you forgot who you were before the world told you who to be. In isolation, the masks came off. The patterns were exposed. The wounds you thought you healed, they started speaking again. And for the first time, you didn't silence them. You sat with them. You listened. You cried. You unraveled. You confronted. And in doing so, you began a journey most people will never take. The journey inward. That's why not everyone is chosen, because few are willing to endure the furnace of divine solitude. But you, chosen one, stayed. You didn't run from the silence. You surrendered to it. And it became sacred. It became the soil where your healing took root. You learned that healing doesn't always happen in community. Sometimes it happens in caves, away from the spotlight, away from the noise. You found that the most powerful breakthroughs are born in breakdowns, and that true clarity often arrives in the quiet. You stopped chasing validation. You stopped begging for company that didn't nourish your soul. You stopped explaining your pain to people committed to misunderstanding you. And that decision, it saved you, because in the absence of others, you discovered the presence of God, of peace, of alignment. You realized you weren't really alone. You were being held, hidden, protected, preserved for something greater. So the next time you question why you had to walk alone, remember this. Isolation wasn't a setback. It was a sanctuary, a holy place where the Most High met you, molded you, and ministered to your broken places. You were never forgotten. You were being forged. Chapter 3. The shedding of the old identity. Chosen one, you didn't just lose material things. You lost versions of yourself, layers of your identity that you had spent years building, maintaining, protecting, and as painful as it was, it had to happen because those versions of you were never the full truth. They were coping mechanisms, survival tools, shadows of who you thought you needed to be in order to feel safe, accepted, and loved. You lost the people pleaser, the version of you that twisted and bent to meet everyone else's expectations. The one who said yes when your soul was screaming no. The one who swallowed truth just to keep the peace. That version of you was exhausted. But perfection was a prison, and inside it, your real self couldn't breathe. You lost the shapeshifter, the version of you that wore masks just to survive. You learned how to mirror people, how to hide your emotions, how to act unbothered even when you were breaking inside. You learned how to fake fine, but deep down you were tired of not being known, truly known. And yes, when those versions began to fall away, it felt like death, because in many ways it was. It was the death of illusions, the death of performance, the death of identities that were never yours to carry in the first place. You mourned those versions because they were familiar. They helped you survive. They protected you when you didn't know any better. But here's the sacred truth. You outgrew them, and life made sure you couldn't go back. The old rooms no longer fit. The old relationships felt suffocating. The old dreams no longer sparked your soul. Why? Because those versions were built on fear, not faith, on survival, not sovereignty. And now you're being called to live, not just survive. Don't grieve who you used to be. Honor them. They were necessary. They carried you through some of the darkest seasons. They were the armor you needed when you were still learning your worth. But now you're in a different season, a divine season, one where armor isn't needed, only authenticity. Because underneath all those layers is the real you, the one who doesn't perform to be loved, the one who doesn't shrink to be accepted, the one who doesn't hustle for worthiness, the one who knows, I am enough just as I am. This shedding wasn't easy. It left you raw, exposed, unsure of who you were becoming. But that discomfort, it's the space between who you were and who you're destined to be. You're not lost. You're being reborn. And now you're beginning to see, you were never meant to fit in. You were never meant to blend, to conform, to settle. You were always meant to break the mold, to be different, to walk your own path, to carry a frequency others couldn't decode. That's why the old identity had to die, so the divine identity could rise. You're not just stepping into a new season, you're stepping into a new self, one that's bold, free, whole. This is your liberation, chosen one, and you earned every inch of it. Chapter 4. Discovering strength you never knew. You had chosen one. There's a sacred moment in every transformation, a point where you look around and everything that once gave you security is gone. The job, the relationship, the praise, the plans, all of it stripped away. You're left standing in the ruins, not knowing how you're still standing, but somehow you are. And it's in that moment, when you have nothing left to lean on, that you discover something priceless. You are stronger than you ever imagined. This strength didn't come from success. It didn't come from applause or affirmation. It came from rock bottom, from the nights when you cried so hard your body ached, from the mornings you didn't think you could face the day but did anyway, from the betrayal that shattered you yet taught you how to rebuild trust within yourself. You discovered how to stand without support. You weren't held up by friends. You weren't cushioned by comfort. You stood because your spirit refused to stay down. You found an inner resolve that defied logic, an instinct to keep going even when every part of you was begging to quit. You learned how to walk without applause. No one was clapping. No one was watching. In fact, many counted you out. but you kept moving anyway. You didn't need a spotlight. You became your own source of light. You realized that walking in purpose isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's silent, lonely, unseen, but still divinely necessary. You discovered how to breathe through heartbreak. Your chest felt crushed. Your soul felt tired. But breath by breath, you found your rhythm again. You whispered prayers when you didn't have the words. You clung to hope even when it flickered like a dying flame. And in that fragile, painful place, you became unbreakable. This strength didn't come from outside. It rose from within, from your soul, from every trial you didn't think you could survive but did, from every rejection that became redirection, from every loss that became a lesson. You were half forged in the fire, and that's why the fire no longer scares you. You know the fire. You understand its language. While others run from it, you walk through it, because now you see the fire didn't come to destroy you. It came to burn away what was never meant to last. And when the smoke cleared, there you stood, still chosen one, this strength in you, it's divine, it's ancestral, it's eternal, it's not learned, it's remembered, it's the power of every trial, every scar, every sacred storm you've endured. You're not just strong because you had to be, you're strong because you were born to be, and now nothing can move you the way it once did, because you know who you are, and even more than that, you know whose you are. Chapter 5. Alignment over attachment. Chosen one of the most powerful revelations you had in your season of loss was this: just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's meant for you. When everything around you was stripped away, people, plans, positions, you were forced to look at what remained. And what you found was clarity. Painful clarity, yes, but sacred clarity. You saw how much of your life had been built on attachment. Attachment to people who were only present when you were pleasing them. Attachment to relationships that drained your spirit but fed your fear of being alone. Attachment to routines, titles, and identities that felt safe but were never in alignment with your soul's mission. You realized you had spent years chasing love that cost you your peace. You tolerated bare minimum energy, hoping one day it would turn into something whole. You kept knocking on doors that wouldn't open, not realizing that rejection was protection. You begged for tables where your spirit didn't even fit, forgetting that you were always meant to build your own. And then something within you shifted, not out of bitterness, but out of awakening. You stopped chasing, you stopped begging, you stopped proving. You started asking a different question. Not, do they want me? But, is this aligned with who I truly am? You started listening to your spirit, not your scars. Your wounds used to speak for you. They made you cling, settle, and fear letting go. But now, your spirit has the mic, and it's clear. It knows what feels heavy and what feels holy. It knows the difference between a soul connection and a trauma bond. As you began to release what was built on fear, guilt, or ego, something miraculous happened. Alignment stepped in. The people who truly saw you, who celebrated your growth instead of fearing it, they started appearing. The doors you used to force open now opened on their own. The opportunities that once ignored you began to chase you, not because you did more, but because you became aligned. And that's the lesson. What's truly meant for you will never require you to shrink. It won't drain you, confuse you, or make you question your worth. Alignment feels like peace, not pressure. It feels like flow, not force. Losing everything didn't ruin your life. It refined it. It cleared the path so your real blessings could find you. Because as long as your hands were clinging to what was no longer aligned, they were too full to receive what was. What left your life was not a loss. It was a liberation. It was the Most High saying, "You've outgrown this. I have more for you." Chosen one, this is the season where you stop settling for what's comfortable and start claiming what's divinely assigned. No more attachments to what drains you. Only alignment with what elevates you. Because you're not here to chase. You're here to attract by being in tune. You're not here to prove. You're here to embody the truth of who you are. And now that you've chosen alignment over attachment, you're not just surviving, you're soaring. Chapter 6. Walking in Purpose, Not Pressure. Chosen one, you're not the same soul who once walked this path, weighed down by the opinions of others and the fear of being misunderstood. You've been refined, you've been rewired, you've been rebuilt from the inside out. And now you're walking differently. You're no longer moving out of desperation, you're moving with intention. There was a time when you were running in circles, exhausting yourself trying to please people who never saw your worth. You were bending, shrinking, overextending, trying to earn your seat at tables that were never meant to honor your presence. Every step you took was filled with pressure. Pressure to prove you're good enough, strong enough, valuable enough. But then life stripped all that away. The performance ended. The stage collapsed. The spotlight disappeared. And in that quiet, unfamiliar space, you found your true power. You realized your worth was never in what you could do. It was in who you are, not in the titles, not in the relationships, not in the applause, but in the unshakable essence of your being. Now, you're not walking to impress. You're walking to express. You're not proving anything to anyone. You're embodying the truth that's always lived inside you. And that's what makes you dangerous to the systems that once controlled you. You've unplugged from the matrix of people-pleasing and stepped into the flow of divine purpose. Your steps are no longer hurried, no longer frantic, no longer reactive. They're just intentional, rooted, aligned. You're not afraid to pause. You're not afraid to say no. You're not afraid to walk away, because you've seen what's on the other side of surrender. The pressure that once made you feel small now rolls off your back because your soul is no longer for sale. You understand now, purpose is not about being seen. It's about being true. Purpose isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout to be powerful. Purpose is steady. It moves in silence. It shows up in consistency, not chaos. It doesn't crave attention. It commands it, without even trying. And the more you walk in purpose, the less you feel the need to explain yourself. People may not understand your path, and that's okay, because your path isn't a performance. It's an assignment, and those who are meant to walk with you will feel it. They'll recognize the divine authority in your presence. They'll respect the sacred boundaries you've set. They'll align with your frequency because they're called to the same higher ground. You're no longer building a life from pressure. You're building it from presence, from clarity, from discernment, from faith. You finally understand that everything you lost wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Every delay, every detour, every disappointment, it was God pulling you off the path of pressure and placing you on the path of purpose. Chapter 7. The Rise. You found yourself in the fire, chosen one. This isn't just a comeback story. This is a rebirth. You didn't just survive the storm. You became someone new in it. The person reading this now isn't the same soul who once begged for crumbs, tolerated disrespect, or lived in fear of being alone. That version of you, though wounded and weary, carried you through the fire. And in that fire, you were refined, not ruined. You rose from the ashes of your old life, not by chance, but by divine design. Everything that was stripped from you was never meant to stay. The heartbreaks, the betrayals, the closed doors, they were all part of a greater plan. You didn't lose those things to be punished. You lost them to be positioned, because who you are now could have never been birthed in comfort. Comfort doesn't create warriors. Fire does. You faced nights when your tears felt like prayers. Days when you questioned your very existence, moments when you screamed in silence, hoping heaven still heard you. And the truth is, he did. Every tear was a seed, every breakdown was a building block, every no was a divine redirection toward a bigger yes. You see it now, don't you? That job you lost, it was draining your soul. That person who walked away, they couldn't go where you're going. That isolation, it wasn't abandonment. It was alignment. It gave you space to heal, to grow, to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And now you've found yourself. Not the version you performed to be, not the mask you wore to feel accepted, not the shadow of yourself you dimmed to keep the peace, but the real you, the called you, the chosen you. You carry a fire now, not one that burns out of rage, but one that radiates with purpose. You no longer beg for places at tables where you're not respected. You build your own and invite only those aligned with your vision. You no longer chase love. You embody it. You no longer fear endings. You understand they make room for beginnings. The people who left, let them go. Their chapter in your story is over. The doors that slammed shut, bless them. What's behind them wasn't your destiny. The things you lost, they were never losses. They were sacred sacrifices that unlocked a new dimension of who you're becoming. What's ahead of you is greater than anything you left behind. You're not just rising, you've already risen. This is your glory season. The world hasn't seen the best of you yet, because the best of you was being built in the fire, hidden, protected, molded. You were never broken, you were becoming. And now that you've become, you're unstoppable. Walk forward, chosen one, not with fear, but with fire, not with doubt, but with divine authority, because the ashes weren't your